Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Reed. I'm a JD graduate from the United States who has recently passed the NCA examination process in Canada. I'm currently in the process of applying to the Law Society of British Columbia, and I am working as a corporate legal assistant until I'm approved for articling by the Law Society. I am not a tutor, I don't receive any monetary benefit from these videos, and I'm not responsible in any way for the outcomes of your exams, although I do wish you the absolute best of luck. Please like and comment if you enjoyed this video. Okay, today we're going to discuss 10 tips on approaching the NCA exams and open book essay law exams of a similar format. And tip number 1, don't attempt to memorize everything. Learn everything generally and read it thoroughly, and then form what you've read into an outline. Aim to reduce your outline into as efficient and condensed an outline as possible, what I call the attack outline. Be very, very familiar with this attack outline. This outline should contain various formulas and tests for dealing with common issues. For example, from constitutional law, if you get the issue as to whether is this statute constitutional, then you'll have in your outline some bullet points. A pith and substance analysis and the cases you wish to source. Determine the heads of powers, determine if any theories like interjurisdictional immunity applies, federal paramountcy, ancillary powers. Have those tests very condensed in your outline in preparation for issues as to whether a statute is constitutional. Look to provide in your outline similar fact patterns in the cases that you've had to review per the syllabus. In administrative law, fact patterns often go to a review of whether an administrative agency's rulings would be overturned by a court. So have all the relevant tests and their sources condensed so that you can apply the potential fact patterns to the issue in your analysis. Tip number 2, use as many sources from the syllabus as possible and use relevant sources, and you can source multiple cases for the same test or rule. So if multiple cases come to the same conclusion and they're in your syllabus, why not list 2, 3 cases if that's what goes to it. Tip number 3, follow the syllabus exactly and do not go outside the syllabus, especially in the NCA exams. Aim for a thorough understanding of narrow issues versus trying to understand every possible remote scenario. Start with everything and then narrow, narrow, narrow. Tip number 4, other people's notes are not that great of a help, especially at first, because the process in which you make the notes and build the outline and then narrow the outline is the same process which allows you to understand the framework of how to approach the test. It's a learning process, and it should not be skipped. In short, it is much better to make your own notes. Then you can compare to other notes if you like, see if there are inconsistencies in your notes, and then do your own due diligence to see if you are right and they are wrong. Great, or maybe they're right. And then you can correct your own notes that you've learned the proper way, and I feel like that is the best process of learning and what they're intending for you to learn. Tip number 5, read the cases in full where appropriate. See how the judges have applied their analysis of the rules. It's generally very logical. In the case of A, this happened. The case at hand is different than case A because X was not involved. Therefore, we should judge differently in the case at hand. These are generally how the logic in these cases that we are assigned to read plays out. So when you're writing your analysis, do this logical analysis with each and every relevant fact asserted in the fact pattern with each and every test that may or may not apply. And if the test doesn't really apply, then just come to a quick conclusion on why it doesn't apply to potentially pick up a few extra points. Example, whether there's federal paramountcy. The rule says federal paramountcy applies when X, and then cite the cases. Because there is no X, then federal paramountcy is not an issue in the case at hand. Logic. Similar logic will also apply to elements in criminal or tort law. Compare your fact pattern to the most similar fact pattern in one of the cases that you've been assigned, and then analyze the elements and sub-elements thoroughly. Tip number 6, formatting is everything. The NCA provides a useful guide, and anyone can look it up online. Law students, you can look up the NCA guide on how to answer exams. And your law professor at your school, if you're at a school, may have specific instructions, and if you don't know if they do, don't be afraid to ask. answering your exam how your professor wants you to answer can be extremely useful in maximizing your points. Basically, organize your answers as best as you can in essay answers. Use headings, use roadmaps. A roadmap will look like, in order to prove, here's an example, in order to prove that Johnny committed assault, we must prove A, threat by one person to commit unwanted physical contact to another person. B, reasonable belief to feel threatened with imminent harm. So your heading, and you won't have the word heading, by the way, your heading will usually be in bold and say, threat by one person to commit unwanted physical contact to another person. It lets the examiner know what you're trying to discuss. Then, issue. First, we will look at whether there was a threat. Rule. In the case of X, threat was defined as Y. Cite the case. Analysis. In the case at hand, R. Because R was nearly identical to Y, then most likely there was a valid threat in the case at hand. Conclusion. There most likely was a threat. Issue. Next, we will look at where the threat was committed by a person, and so on. So the roadmap lets them know what we're going to look at, and usually the issue will be defined there. So first we will look at whether there was a threat. That is the roadmap embedded into your answer. Now, note, it is not usually necessary to have the letters of IRAC, I-R-A-C, or the words issue, rule, analysis, etc. These are generally obvious to most examiners if you lay out your answers in a logical format. So the word whether will imply an issue, having a rule cited implies there's a rule, having a logical analysis format implies analysis, etc. So you don't need the IRACs, usually. Tip number 7. Read and reread all of the instructions. No kidding. Eliminate potential challenges this way. If the instructions say install the software in advance, then do so. Read and stick to the instructions. Tip number 8. Be early for the exam so that you have a window in case something goes wrong, computer updates or tech issues on their side. I've been through all of it. Have your area prepared the night before. Clean the surfaces. If you have non-test related books, cover them with a blanket or whatnot. Get them out of there. Artwork removed from the walls, etc. All the little things that the examiners are looking for, especially if you're taking an online exam, right? And, tip number 9, in the 24 hours before the test, other than your final preparations, do your best to give your mind a break from the stress, whatever works for you. Immediately before and during the test, visualize the successful outcome. Be confident and thorough. Be mechanical. These are tips on how I use to drive myself through these exams, generally to great success. Tip number 10, final tip, if you have any extra time at the end of the exam, and you should not have excessive extra time, so really question your answers if you do. Like, did you miss a big issue that should have been explored? So if you have significant extra time, treat it that way. What did I miss? But if you have a little bit, 15, 20 minutes, go back and proofread carefully. Reduce excessive wording, reduce your words, reduce your paragraphs. Try to make your logic and your answers more efficient, more accurate, more precise. Correct your formatting issues, correct your spacing issues, because this is a start of a professional career. So make your exam submissions look as professional and precise as possible. Like this video, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell for more videos on Canadian law.